about alcohol, chapter 5, on everybody's favorite chapter. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. The majority of the people worldwide drink alcoholic beverages. This doesn't include Islamic countries where it's not allowed by Quranic law. Also doesn't include most Mormons don't drink either. There are some other Protestants who don't drink. Baptists and Methodists sometimes will not drink because of the way that they interpret the Bible. China's alcohol consumption has doubled. So India's alcohol consumption has increased 50%. 23% of English boys and 27% of English girls 15 to 16 were drunk 3 times or more in the past month. Russian men consume the equivalent of 6 to 7 bottles of vodka per capita per year. 75,000 alcoholics are homeless in Japan out of a total of 100,000 homeless people in Japan. Around the world, more than 2 million people died due to alcohol last year. Approximately 10% of all diseases and injuries around the world were a direct result of alcohol abuse. Last month, at least 126,000 Americans, about 52% of all Americans 12 and older, had at least one beer, one glass of wine, or one cocktail. 16 million of this group are considered heavy drinkers. More than 2/3 of 11 million American college students at four-year colleges had one drink, or more than 2/3 of those drinkers had 5 or more drinks on at least one occasion in the past year. That includes beer bongs, which is a very confusing thing, to me anyway. About 6.2% of 8th grade students, 18.5% of 10th grade students, and 30% of 12th grade students have been drunk in the United States. Yesterday, about $250 million was spent at bars, restaurants, and liquor stores for alcoholic beverages in the United States. Yesterday, 7,500 brides and grooms were toasted with champagne in the United States. 25 to 30% of all hospital admissions in the United States were due to direct or indirect medical complications from alcohol. And there's nothing more irritating to people in the emergency room or in ICU than having a drunk come in and taking up a room in your emergency room.
New messages received from 32665.
About half the murder victims and half the murderers in the United States were drinking alcohol at the time of the crime. More than half the rapes that occurred in the United States involved alcohol. About half of the American adults have a close family member who has or has had alcoholism, including my family. In the United States, 2,700,000 crime victims reported that the offender had been drinking alcohol prior to committing the crime. Every year, alcohol abuse and addiction cost businesses, the judicial system, medical facilities, and the United States more than $186 billion, or more than $638 for every man, woman, and child. Alcohol may be as old as civilized man. Evidence of fermented beverages have been found in China that are at least 9,000 years old. A beer recipe was found in ancient Mesopotamia that dates back 7,400 years. Alcohol has been used as a reward for pyramid builders, as food, grain-enriched beer, which is still common in Africa, as a cure-all, laudanum, alcohol mixed with opium, as a sacrament in both the Jewish and Christian religions, water substitute with the contaminated water supply in Europe, social lubricant whenever and wherever it's used, as a tranquilizer for whoever uses it. And as source of taxes, it is especially heavily taxed in the United States and Europe. Throughout history, alcohol has been banned for its negative effects on its users. 2,650 years ago, alcohol was banned in China. 2,500 years ago, alcohol was banned by select Buddhist sects. The ban continues to this day. The gin epidemic found 20 million gallons of gin being manufactured per year. The death toll was enormous. It was controlled by heavy taxing in 1751, which reduced consumption. Prohibition in the United States with the 18th Amendment was ratified by 46 out of 48 states by 1920. Iowa was the 29th state to ratify the amendment. It was repealed by the 21st Amendment in 1933. Alcohol prohibition or even control have often run into a stone wall. Attempts in sub-Saharan Africa to control beer consumption has been impossible because of the fairly nutritious home-brewed beer that provides a modicum of grain. The Pilgrims loved their grog. The idea followed through to the Revolution as alcohol sales and taxation provided needed revenue to finance the war. Temperance began in the United States in 1840, but wasn't successful until 80 years later. Alcohol continues to provide revenue for governments in the United States. The federal government taxes alcohol manufacturers $13.50 for each 180 proof gallon. 180 proof is just about pure. I think 200 proof is pure. The states average a little less than half that much at $6.50. Beer and wine are taxed differently. About a nickel a drink goes to the federal government per beer. Wine is taxed by alcohol content. 14% or less is taxed at 21 cents per fifth. 14 to 21% is taxed at 31 cents per fifth. 21 to 24% is taxed at 62 cents per fifth. Naturally sparkling wine is taxed at 67 cents per fifth, and artificially carbonated wine is taxed at 65 cents per fifth. There are hundreds of different alcohols ranging from deadly poisonous to barely toxic. The alcohol that people drink is ethyl alcohol, grain alcohol, ethanol, or ETOH. That's the way we used to write it in the laboratory, ETOH, ethyl alcohol. The next most common alcohol is methyl alcohol, wood alcohol, or methanol. Isopropyl alcohol or isopropanol is a solvent that we use in medicine. So that alcohol smell you get when you go to the hospital or the emergency room, it's isopropanol. Butyl alcohol or butanol is used in industrial processes. Any beverage with over 2% alcohol is called an alcoholic beverage. Most beers are 3.2 beers in the United States, are a little bit stronger in Canada. They're a little bit stronger in Europe. They're a lot stronger in Japan and China. All alcohol beverages contain ethyl alcohol, but may acquire the other alcohols in the production process. Additions due to the production are called congeners, which add distinctive tastes, aromas, and colors to the beverage. Congeners may be acids, aldehydes, esters, ketones, phenols, or tannins. Some beverages add a number of congeners. Whiskey and brandy have the most, while beer and vodka have the least. The more congener in the beer, the more severe the hangover. Methyl alcohol is fairly toxic and has a curious affinity for the optic nerve. During Prohibition in the United States, some bootleg manufacturers mistakenly added methanol to their beverages to increase the alcohol content. The result was often blindness or, in extreme cases, death. Alcohol comes in three categories: beer, wine, and distilled spirits. Beer is produced when grain is fermented, usually barley or wheat. Wine is produced when fruit is fermented, mostly grapes and plums, but also peaches. Distilled spirits are made from fermented grains. Whiskey is 40 to 50% alcohol. Tubers, vodka is about 75% alcohol. Fruit, schnapps, and palinka, about 40 to 50% alcohol. Vegetables or any other plant, absinthe, tequila, mezcal, rum, anywhere between 40 and 75% alcohol. It can be made from other fermented beverages. It can be distilled spirits can be made from wine. There you go. Alcohol, the great crippler of young adults. 2 glasses of wine is the same as 1 glass of beer. Oh, there it is. A glass of wine is the same as a 12-ounce glass of beer, or 1.5 ounce distilled spirits. The first indication of beer consumption comes from 10,000 years ago. Beer is made from grains, usually barley, but sometimes wheat, which have been allowed to sprout and then crushed and fermented with hops and yeast. Ale is about 5 to 6% alcohol. These are the different types of beers. Ale is about 5 to 6% alcohol. Stout, also known as Guinness, is another type of beer. Porter is another type of beer. Malt liquor, in the United States, we have Colt 45, Mickey's, and Old English 800. It's between 6 and 9% alcohol. Most of the beer drunk in the United States is lager beer. Budweiser, Coors, and Miller are all lager beers. They have between 3.2 and 5% alcohol. Bock beers are very popular on the East Coast, from Cincinnati east. Hudepohl, Schaenling, Michelob, Amber, Bock are all Bock beers. Wine is a fermented beverage from a fruit or grain. Most people think of wine as coming from grapes, but it can also be processed from rice, peaches, or plums. American wines tend to be stronger than European wines. American wines have between 12 to 14% alcohol. European wines contain 8 to 12% alcohol. Now, there's a reason for this. You'll have to remember that most of the water supply in Europe is contaminated. And for that reason, European wines are weaker because they use it as water. It's the only thing they have to drink because the water is so contaminated. In the United States, of course, wine is a delicacy. So American wines tend to be stronger. Fortified wines have alcohol added and have 17 to 21% alcohol. Wine coolers contain juice and have around 6% alcohol. Distilled spirits are alcoholic beverages that go through a distillation process, concentrating the substance into ethyl alcohol. These spirits are almost always stronger than beer or wine. When this process was developed in Europe, the number of alcoholics on the continent exploded. When the immigrants came to the United States, they found it cheaper to transport their sugar as rum and their corn as whiskey. Alcoholism has been very high in the United States since colonial days. Europeans tend to drink much more alcohol than the people in the United States. Americans drink 95 liters of beer per capita and 20 liters of wine. Germans drink 131 liters of beer per capita and 22 liters of wine. Brits drink 103 liters of beer per capita and 13 liters of wine. The French drink only 40 liters of beer per capita, but 60 liters of wine. And Italians drink 103 liters of beer per capita and 59 liters of wine, making the Italians the heaviest drinkers. Alcohol is absorbed all along the gastrointestinal tract. It starts in your stomach and it goes all the way down to your colon. In men, 10 to 20% of the alcohol is absorbed by the stomach, whereas women absorb no alcohol in their stomachs. Most of the men's alcohol and almost all of the women's alcohol is absorbed through capillaries in the wall of the small intestine. Because of the different processing of alcohol for males and females, a woman who consumes the same amount of alcohol and weighs the same as a man will still maintain about 30% more alcohol in her bloodstream. Women have a greater problem than men because women have a lower percentage of body water to dilute the alcohol. Women have less alcohol dehydrogenase in their stomachs to break down alcohol. Women's hormonal fluctuations can make them more or less susceptible to alcohol's effect. Women absorb more alcohol during their premenstrual period than at any other time during their cycle. Alcohol does greater damage to women than men. Female alcoholics have death rates 50 to 100% higher than male alcoholics. The alcohol that is absorbed in the bloodstream is partially metabolized by the liver. The alcohol that is not metabolized by the liver moves easily through the capillary walls and can enter any organ or tissue because the molecules are small. It is water soluble, but it's also lipid soluble. Alcohol will readily cross the placental barrier and pass into the fetus's bloodstream. So when mama drinks, baby drinks. After imbibing, the individual will have the highest concentration of alcohol 60 to 90 minutes after the last drink. Rate of absorption determines the degree of effects, which can be influenced by weight, body fat, body chemistry, emotional state, health status, and temperature and barometric pressure. The hotter it is, the faster it goes into your system. The higher the barometric pressure, the faster it goes into your system. So if there's a storm brewing, then and you're drinking shots of tequila, you're going to get drunk a lot faster. Absorption and drunkenness can be increased by increasing the volume or rate of drinking, drinking fast. Drinking on an empty stomach goes right into your stomach. Using high alcohol percentage drinks, drinking carbonated beverages, champagne, tonic water, or mixing it with tonic water or pop. Warming the alcohol will also get it into your system faster. Once upon a time, I was working in the laboratory, and the SPs brought a man in who was drunk, and we needed to do two things. We needed to draw blood alcohol, which I did, no problem. And then he needed to collect a drug urine specimen. And he couldn't pee, and he couldn't pee, and he couldn't pee. So the SPs decided that they were going to give him water. Well, we weren't exactly sure how drunk the guy was, so we gave him water. And as soon as he drank the water, it brought the alcohol out of his stomach lining. Remember, he was a male, and about 30% of all the alcohol is absorbed in the stomach. So when he drank that water, it brought the alcohol out of his stomach. It put that much more alcohol into his system, and he passed out right in the bathroom. So we had to take him up to the emergency room. Eventually, we got the drug urine, but we were a little embarrassed. I didn't think he was that drunk. You need fluids in your body to be able to urinate. Anyway, everything turned out okay, I guess. We got the urine. You can slow absorption or lessen the effects of alcohol by eating before or while drinking. Eating fatty foods with the fat will absorb the alcohol. Meats, milks, cheeses, and any other fatty foods will work. That also actually works with hangovers, and that's one of the reasons why people try to feed you greasy food the day if you have a really bad hangover, which makes you queasy, and that's not why they're trying to do it. It also absorbs whatever alcohol is left in your system, and that should lessen your hangover. Diluting the drink with ice water or juice will lessen the effects of the alcohol. 2 to 10% of alcohol will be excreted through metabolism before metabolism occurs. The remaining 90 to 98% of the alcohol is metabolized through oxidation by the liver and excreted through the kidneys and the lungs. And if you've ever been around somebody that's been drinking, you can sure smell it on their breath. In order of oxidation, ethanol is broken down by alcohol dehydrogenase to make acetaldehyde. Acetaldehyde is broken down by acetaldehyde dehydrogenase to make acetic acid, which is broken down by oxygen to make carbon dioxide and water. Acetaldehyde is a substance that resembles formaldehyde and is very toxic to the liver, and this is one of the reasons why drinking a lot is not the wisest thing you can do, especially if you don't want to hurt your liver. It has been speculated that American Indians may have a high alcoholism rate and advanced cirrhosis because of disruptions of the acetaldehyde dehydrogenase and alcohol dehydrogenase systems. This, along with the binge pattern of drinking, increases the likelihood of an unfortunate outcome for drinking with American Indians. Individuals may use home remedies to keep from getting drunk. Aspirin inhibits metabolism of alcohol, and when used as a prophylactic to lessen the possibility of a hangover, actually causes the individual to become drunk faster. I had a girlfriend once upon a time who would drink, she'd take aspirin to keep from getting a hangover. This is before she was my girlfriend. And one of the reasons that we got together later was because we were drawing. This was during Vietnam War. We were drawing units of blood to send to Vietnam, and she couldn't give blood. And the reason she couldn't give blood was because her blood was too thin. And the reason it was too thin was because she was taking so much aspirin. Aspirin thins your blood. So she was having prolonged periods, and she kept coming in for blood tests, and we did all these strange tests. And that's how we met, because I was really good at getting her blood. I'm pretty good at drawing blood, and she had pretty skinny little veins. But I was able to get a unit of blood out of her, and I was also able to draw her blood every time I stuck her, which was kind of amazing because she had the biggest eyes you ever saw. And she just looked me right in the eye when I drew her blood. And lucky I could breathe. The reality is that blood is metabolized by the body at a fairly steady rate, about 1 ounce, that's about 1.5 drinks, every 3 hours. So you're only getting rid of 1.5 drinks every 3 hours. So if you're trying to stay up with your drinking, that means you can only drink 1.5 drinks every 3 hours. That's not drinking very fast. Most people drink a lot faster than that. And that's why they get drunk. It takes about 20 minutes before the alcohol is passed into the intestines and has started to affect the brain. In most states, a blood alcohol level of 0.08 is considered legal intoxication. For truck drivers, it is half that level, and pilots is 1/4. England's legal limit is 0.04. Norway's legal limit is 0.10. The rest of Europe is 0.025. Australia's legal limit is 0.05. So as you can see, Norway has the highest legal limit. But Norway also has the death penalty well, it's not the death penalty. They take your driver's license away forever if you ever get caught with the DUI. So, whoops. Small amounts of ethanol or even infrequent bouts of intoxication have little, if any, negative effects. No level of alcohol use is safe for someone who is pregnant. Any mental or physical problems that an individual has can be aggravated by alcohol. Some are allergic to alcohol and its congeners. Some have a high genetic or environmental susceptibility to addiction. Some have a history of abuse and addiction. Alcohol increases the probability of breast cancer. Therapeutic uses of ethanol, it's used as a solvent in medications because it is fat and water soluble. Topical, it's used as a topical disinfectant. It's used as a body rub to reduce fever. Pain reliever for nerve-related pain. It can be used to halt premature labor. In hospitals, of course, we use magnesium sulfate to stop labor. These are individuals that drank themselves to death. Vern Troyer became famous as Mike Myers' Mini-Me in the Austin Powers movies. He drank himself to death. That was ruled as a suicide at age 49. Dolores O'Riordan was the voice of the Irish alternative band The Cranberries. She took a bath while heavily intoxicated and drowned at age 46. David Cassidy was a TV star on the hit show The Partridge Family and a teen idol, teen icon who rode his fame into a successful singing career. He died at 67 of complications from a lifetime of heavy drinking. Amy Winehouse was an English singing sensation who battled drug addiction all of her adult life. She died at 27 of acute alcohol poisoning after reducing her tolerance for alcohol by abstaining from drinking for a month before her death. Her blood alcohol test was 0.416. Healthy Mickey Mantle was potentially the greatest player to ever play baseball. His career was diminished through injuries and alcohol-related self-sabotage. He died at age 63 of chronic liver problems. Truman Capote, the guy on the right, was the author of such classics as In Cold Blood and Breakfast at Tiffany's. After growing up as Harper Lee's neighbor in Mississippi, Capote fulfilled the Southern drinking tradition by succumbing to alcohol-related health problems at age 59. Richard Burton was one of the most celebrated actors of the 50s and 60s. He famously married Elizabeth Taylor twice. He died at 58 of kidney failure and cirrhosis of the liver. John Bonham was the drummer for the heavy metal band Led Zeppelin. Bonham died at 32 after consuming 1.4 liters, that's 1.85 fifths, or 4 12-ounce cans of liquor. Vodka, 4 12-ounce cans of vodka in 24 hours. That's a lot of booze. Veronica Lake was the it girl of the early 1940s with her platinum blonde hair and peekaboo hairdo. She died at age 50 of kidney failure and acute cirrhosis of the liver from a lifetime of drinking. Curly Howard was the butt of most of the Three Stooges pratfalls. An introvert, Curly Howard was only able to perform when intoxicated. He died at 48 of alcohol-related complications. Why people drink? They think it tastes good, to quench their thirst, to relax muscle tension, to warm themselves up. It dilates blood vessels and increases blood flow to subcutaneous tissue, and that's why drunks have red noses. Red wines are full of antioxidants and work as an anti-inflammatory on the circulatory system. 1 to 2 drinks per day reduces the incidence of heart disease and plaque buildup. It has an anti-inflammatory effect. It increases your HDL. It changes the interaction of the lipoproteins, HDL and LDL, and it decreases tension. These effects are even true in the most serious alcoholics. These people die from or with enlarged hearts, cirrhotic livers, and of course damaged brains. Health benefits of alcohol in viable women: drinking increases the effects of estrogen on bone loss, giving them higher bone mass. 1 to 2 drinks per day lowers the risk of stroke. Heavy drinking actually increases the possibility of stroke. It can add to relaxation and decrease the time it takes to go to sleep. Alcohol reduces REM sleep and decreases dreaming, making the individual feel less rested the next day. Chronic drinking of alcohol increases the risk of sleep apnea. Not everybody has the same psychological effect with alcohol. It can depend on the environment used, the mood of the individual prior to drinking, the general psychological makeup of the user. It tends to lower inhibitions, it increases self confidence, it promotes sociability, it calms, it relaxes, it sedates, it reduces tension. For someone lonely, depressed, angry, or suicidal, alcohol acts as a depressant. It deepens negative emotions with disinhibiting effects, makes them more verbal aggressive, physically aggressive, and tends to make them more violent. Even low to moderate doses can impair judgment when driving and result in vehicular crashes. It leads to high risk sexual activity. Neurotransmitters affected by alcohol. Initially, it causes a release of serotonin, raising mood. Excess use of depletes serotonin, causing depression. Dopamine is released during surge of pleasure. This is D1, D2, and D3 in the mesolimbic reward pathway. It causes a release of norepinephrine, resulting in positive mood and raised self-esteem. Metenkephalin is released, reducing pain. Glutamate release is pleasurable, reinforcing drinking. Endorphins and anandamides are released, reinforcing drinking. NMDA receptors are inhibited, impairing memory. GABA is released, lowering inhibitions and slowing the brain. Alcohol and sex at low doses increases desire in both males and females. It can intensify orgasms in females. It decreases erectile function and delays ejaculation in males. Alcohol has long been mythologized as a sexual lubricant, though its effects should not always lead to this reality. Unfortunately, among adolescents, 39% of males and 18% of females believe that a drunk female is fair game to have sex forced on her. And of course, this has happened over and over and over again. High blood alcohol levels can cause intoxication, but experienced drinkers can mask the effects of alcohol for a brief period. Binge drinking is consuming 5 or more drinks in one sitting for males and 4 or more drinks in one sitting for a female. 44% of college students admit to being binge drinkers. 21% of college students admit to binging frequently. Binge drinkers between 21 and 25 average 18 binges a year. Binge drinkers between 18 and 20 average 15 binges a year, despite the fact that it is illegal for them to drink in the United States. For many people who drink frequently, 5 drinks will not get them drunk. Heavy drinking is consuming 5 or more drinks at a sitting or at least 5 times a month. With heavy consumption, the drinker can no longer control their mood from the alcohol. The depressant effect takes over. Blood pressure is lowered. Motor reflexes slow. Digestion and nutrient absorption becomes inefficient. Body heat escapes rapidly because of chronically dilated blood vessels. Sexual performance becomes unlikely. Speech slurs. Muscle coordination becomes questionable. Alertness decreases. High doses of alcohol, a blood alcohol test level of 0.12, remember 0.08 is drunk, may cause mental confusion, mood swings, loss of judgment, emotional turbulence, slurred speech, loss of emotional control, disturbed REM sleep and dreaming, fatigue during the day, insomnia at night, bedwetting, apnea in the form of snoring. Alcohol consumed at high doses rapidly can lead to alcohol poisoning at a blood alcohol level of 0.40. This will cause a depression to the central nervous system. They may become unconscious. They may go into a coma. They may suffer from respiratory arrest. They may have cardiac failure. And of course, if none of these are taken care of, then they will die. When other depressants are in the system, such as opiates or sedative hypnotics, metabolism is slowed and the possibility of death increases. And of course, I've seen alcohol poisoning. I was thinking about this the other day when I was going over this lecture. I was thinking about this the other day because we had a kid that came in one time and he had chug-a-lugged a bottle of tequila. This was a fraternity prank or initiation or something. He had chug-a-lugged a bottle of tequila, and we were able to get him to vomit. We tried to dilute things by putting an IV in his arm. Actually, we put an IV in both arms. And so here we are. He's coming in and out of consciousness. And the doctor said, "Man, when that alcohol hits his, when it gets into the small intestine, as soon as it drops out of his stomach, there's nothing we can do." And of course, what had happened was that he had consumed a lot of alcohol, and it had been absorbed through his stomach. And whatever was in his small intestine, there was nothing we could do to get it out. We emptied his stomach, and as soon as it hit his small intestine, the kid died, and there was nothing we could do. Yeah. And all we could do was watch him and try to keep him going. And we gave him heart massage. We didn't open his chest up, but we gave him heart massage. We tried to breathe for him. Not a damn thing we could do. The alcohol just kept moving through his system, and he got worse and worse, and then he finally died. With novice drinkers with a low tolerance, the deadly effects of alcohol will begin at a lower blood alcohol test level around 0.20. Respiration severely slows. The abuser goes into a semi-conscious state. And that was the funny thing. Well, it wasn't that funny. That was the odd thing about the situation. This kid never had, this is the first alcohol he had ever consumed. So despite the fact that, somebody that was fairly tolerant to alcohol could have done what he did and not died. But since he was a novice, it killed him. Respiration severely slows. The abuser goes into a semi-conscious state. Vomiting occurs, usually because they're not used to the alcohol. The abuser may aspirate vomitus, blocking the lungs or leading to an introduction of the acidic substance contaminating the lung tissue. The result may be pneumonia or death. About 1/3 of all drinkers and 2/3 of all drunks experience blackout. During blackouts, a person seems to act normally and is awake, but afterward cannot recall anything that was said or done. Blackouts are caused by an electrochemical disruption in the brain. Even a small amount of alcohol might lead to a blackout. Blackouts are considered an early indication of alcoholism. A partial recall of events is known as a brownout. Researchers have found several explanations for blackouts. The EEGs of individuals who black out show a dampening of the P3 and P300 brain waves. Women who have suffered a sexual trauma at an early age were more likely to drink and more likely to black out when they did drink. Researchers have found that alcohol greatly disrupts the activity of the CA1 region of the hippocampus. The CA1 region of the hippocampus facilitates the formation of memory. Alcohol also disrupts NMDA receptors in the hippocampus. Thus, receptor allows for long-term memory to be formed. This is a receptor, so you can't. When you drink, you have a difficult time forming long-term memories because that's the job of the NMDA receptor. No one is quite sure why hangovers occur. It has been speculated that the more congeners in the alcohol the more likely the individual will suffer from a hangover, though even pure alcohol will leave someone with a hangover. Alcohol does irritate the stomach lining, and this might contribute to the intestinal symptoms. Other symptoms and results include low blood sugar, dehydration, and tissue degradation. The bottom line, however, is that the more alcohol consumed, the more severe the hangover. Hangovers are the most severe many hours after the alcohol has been completely eliminated from the system. Causes nausea, vomiting, headache, thirst, dizziness, mood disturbances, abbreviated sleep, sensitivity to light, sensitivity to noise, dry mouth, inability to concentrate, a general depressed feeling. Chronic high-dose users are the most likely to suffer from hangovers. The best way to control the side effects of alcohol is to control the amount of alcohol consumed. There you go. That's a shocker for you. The elimination of alcohol from the system is a constant. 0.25 to 0.33 ounces of alcohol eliminated per hour. Hangovers are caused by an imbalance of hormones, enzymes, body fluids, and body systems. Until these come back into equilibrium, the symptoms will persist. Body fluids and sugar levels can be replaced with fruit juices. Analgesics can reduce the headache pain. Nothing works on hormones. Nothing works on body systems. Nothing works on enzymes. Recovery can only come with time and rest. Tylenol should be avoided because it can do additional liver damage when alcohol is present in the system. Chronic alcohol usage does more damage to the entire neurochemistry and cellular system of the body than any other psychoactive substance. Alcohol especially affects the digestive system and liver because it is the organs of these systems that deal with the alcohol in its purest form. It is these systems that are tasked by the body to rid the entity of this toxin. 80% of the alcohol is metabolized by the liver. High doses in chronic usage damages the liver and compromises its function. It can give you fatty liver, hepatitis, or cirrhosis. Accumulation of fatty acids in the liver can occur after only a few days of heavy drinking. While abstinence will reduce the accumulated fat, constant abuse can lead to fatty livers. About 20% of alcoholics and heavy drinkers will develop fatty livers. I was working in a rural health clinic in Oklahoma, and my doctor called me in one time. He said, "Here, palpate this liver," and I'm thinking, well, geez, this isn't something I do very often, and so I started palpating this guy's liver, and I said, I can't feel anything. He said, "No, what you're doing is what you feel is his liver." I said, "Come on, your liver's right under your right rib cage," and I couldn't feel. I could feel it was just solid. And he said, "Yeah, his liver goes all the way down to his pelvis." And I palpated it all the way down to his pelvis. I could feel the edge of it right there on the side of his pelvis. His liver was that fatty. Anyway, well, he died not very long after that. My doctor, he was such a joker. Fatty liver is just one possible outcome. 10 to 35% of heavy drinkers develop alcoholic hepatitis. Hepatitis is an inflammation of the liver which can result in formation of scar tissue, fibrosis, cell death, necrosis, damage to membranes. This condition is characterized by jaundice, liver enlargement, tenderness, and pain. And this is one of the reasons why a lot of alcoholics, you'll look in their eyes, you can see the whites, they don't have whites of their eyes, they have yellows of their eyes because it's all jaundiced. Abstinence is the only cure, but the liver damage is permanent. Once you destroy cells in your liver, there's no regeneration that takes place. When heavy drinking leads to excessive fibrosis, and this is one of the reasons why you have to, the only way to take care of a cirrhotic liver is to transplant, and that's all you can do. But most doctors will not transplant a healthy liver into somebody that's a drinker because they know that they're just wasting the liver. You should transplant it into somebody who will take good care of it. That's the idea, anyway. I had a friend that her sister-in-law was looking for a kidney, but she was a smoker, and they wouldn't transplant her because she smoked, and she had emphysema. Why in the world would you give somebody a fresh kidney if they were just going to ruin it? Cirrhosis is the leading cause of death among alcoholics. About 12,000 Americans die every year from cirrhosis of the liver. The cirrhosis is not only caused by the alcohol, but the metabolites of the alcohol that are actually more toxic than the alcohol. The free radicals and acetaldehyde. Remember, it's just like formaldehyde, which is what you preserve tissue in, is formaldehyde. And here we are, we're making acetaldehyde in our own systems. It usually takes 10 years steady drinking to achieve cirrhosis. 80% of all cirrhosis in the United States is caused by alcohol. 2.5 times more men die of cirrhosis than women because men are heavier drinkers than women are. Hispanics seem to be the most sensitive to the cirrhotic effects of alcohol, followed by African Americans and then whites. And you have to remember, white people are professionals. They've been drinking for, ever 10,000 years or so. Rates of cirrhosis in the United States have waxed and waned along with the popularity of alcohol in the culture. Before Prohibition, 17 out of every 100,000 people suffered from cirrhosis. In 1932, at the end of Prohibition, the level dropped by more than half to 8 per 100,000. By 1973, which was the disco era, the level was 14.9 out of 100,000. You were supposed to go to the disco and drink mixed drinks and dance like John Travolta. That's why it went up so high. In 2004, the level had dropped to 9 per 100,000. It would be interesting to find out what. Wait a second. Let me see. Cirrhosis level in the U.S. today. In the United States, cirrhosis affects about 0.25% of all adults, about 0.50% of adults between the ages of 45 and 54. 26,000 deaths in the United States are attributed to cirrhosis. Anyway, okay. There you go. 26,000. What did we say? Anyway. Other countries, especially European countries, have rates of cirrhosis that eclipse that in the United States. Kazakhstan, 23.9%, which is kind of high for a Kazakhstan is actually a Muslim country. Germany, 15.4 per 100,000. Italy, 13.9. Spain, 12.2. France, 12.1. Japan, 7.2. United Kingdom, 6.4. Australia, 4.6. Israel, 4.9. And Greece, 3.4. Low doses of alcohol actually aid in digestion. Moderate to excessive doses induce overproduction of stomach acids, which causes a delay of the emptying of the stomach. Gastritis, excessive use can cause gastritis, inflammation of the stomach, inflammation of the esophagus, inflammation of the small intestine, inflammation of the pancreas, also known as pancreatitis. It's caused by the blocked ducts or overproduction of digestive juices, ulcers, stomach hemorrhaging, gastrointestinal bleeding, cancer. I can remember one night we had a guy that came in with stomach ulcers in his stomach from drinking. And by golly, we kept feeding him ice chips and pumping blood into him. By the time we were done the next day, and I was on call that night, and so I spent all night cross-matching blood for this guy, and we just gave him every drop of blood in the blood bank. And we saved his life, by golly, by the morning. And the sad thing was, and of course, we saved his life, so that was a good thing. But the sad thing was, I had to. When you start cross-matching blood, you can't stop. You got to finish it. There's, once you start, nobody else can take over for you because they don't know what you did. Okay, so I'm cross-matching blood, and I had to stay 2 hours later than I should have. And we saved his life. But it was like 2 days later he went out. He checked himself out of the hospital, went out and drank himself to death. As stupid as that is. Anyway, he had gastrointestinal bleeding. Strangely, you can live on alcohol as each drink carries about 150 calories. But it tends to be poor nutritionally as there are few vitamins, minerals, or proteins. Heavy drinkers may receive half their calories but little nutrition from their drinking. B1 deficiencies can lead to beriberi, heart disease, peripheral nerve degeneration, pellagra, scurvy, and anemia. With heavy usage, intestinal complications may occur, which can result in secondary malnutrition where nutrient absorption is impaired. Alcohol is so toxic that the liver must work overtime to rid the body of its effects. Unfortunately, the other important function of the liver is to store glucose for emergencies in the form of glycogen. With the stress of metabolizing alcohol, the liver is too busy to produce the stored glycogen. Because of this, alcoholics may suffer from hypoglycemia, especially if they are drinking their sustenance. If the individual is taking in sufficient nutrition, the extra carbohydrates in the alcohol can cause hyperglycemia. I was working when I was in the service, we had an anesthetist who was a really bad alcoholic. She would drink screwdrivers in the morning and Bloody Marys at night, and that's all she did. And she'd go to the office. I'm laughing, but yeah, she would drink her sustenance. And she had been married to this guy, and he left her because of her drinking. So what does she do? She marries a guy that was also an alcoholic. And boy, I'll tell you, they were just the happiest clams because they both drank screwdrivers for breakfast and Bloody Marys for dinner. But they put vegetables in the Bloody Marys. They put celery and carrots and stuff. Anyway, don't go over to their house for dinner. That's for sure. Light to moderate drinking of alcohol actually can help the heart. I don't know what happened to her because they shipped her out before. I was there for 7 years, and she was there for about 6. But eventually they sent her someplace, and nobody cared about her alcoholism. It's really kind of weird. Light to moderate drinking of alcohol actually can help the heart. Chronic heavy drinkers can lead to heart disease by a factor of 6 times, hypertension by a factor of 2 to 3 times. They can have cardiac arrhythmia because of their alcohol, cardiomyopathy, which is enlarged, flabby, and inefficient heart. Alcohol damages the striated muscles of the heart. The hearts of heavy drinkers is often twice the size of a normal heart. 80% of heavy drinkers have heart muscle abnormalities, though only 2% suffer from full-blown alcoholic heart muscle disease. Stroke and other intracranial bleeding is also common in people that drink excessively. Usually within 24 hours of heavy drinking, they will have a stroke, or if they're going to have a stroke, they'll have it right after they binge drink. Alcohol kills brain cells by limiting the brain's ability to use glucose and oxygen, though low moderate doses don't seem to cause permanent damage. Heavy doses cause direct damage to nerve cells. Malnutrition caused by alcohol will not only damage brain cells, but brain chemistry as well. Brain atrophy has been documented in up to 100% of alcoholic autopsies. 100% is every one of them. Dementia is a result of prolonged heavy drinking as well. The first autopsy I ever did, the first brain I ever took out, was an alcoholic. This guy was a general, and he was an alcoholic, and by golly, we took his brain out. It was like half the size as it was supposed to be. Anyway, not important. Heavy drinking can lead to two serious brain maladies: Wernicke's encephalopathy, which is characterized by delirium, imbalance, visual problems, and ataxia. Ataxia is a fancy word for inability to coordinate movements in the lower extremities. It also can lead to Korsakoff psychosis, and the symptoms are disorientation, memory failure, and confabulation, or repetition of false memories. Epilepsy is also related to heavy alcoholic intake. Epilepsy is 10 times more prevalent among alcoholics. The reproductive system and sexual desire are also affected by alcohol. Whereas light drinking actually lowers inhibitions and increases desire and the intensity of orgasms, heavy drinking decreases desire and lessens the intensity of orgasms. Research with heavy female drinkers found that 36% only had orgasms 5% of the time. Chronic drinking can inhibit ovulation, decrease gonadal mass, delay menstruation, cause sexual dysfunction, promotes infertility, and increases the chances of spontaneous abortion. Whereas low to moderate drinking can lower inhibitions and enhance the psychological aspects of sexual activity in men, chronic heavy use can lead to the inability to perform. Research found that 71% of alcoholics suffered from erectile dysfunction, compared to only 7% of abstainers. Chronic heavy usage leads to a lower testosterone and an increased estrogen level. And it can lead to male breast enlargement, testicular atrophy, low sperm count, loss of body hair, loss of sexual desire. And of course, performance anxiety once sexual activity is resumed. The most serious effect may be social. Drinkers tend to socialize mainly in bars and at parties where normal sexual relationships will become circumspect because of all of these problems that males have. While the connection between breast cancer and drinking is questionable, the possibility of developing cancers in the areas that come in contact with the alcohol is 6 times greater than those who do not imbibe. Mouth cancer, throat cancer, and esophageal cancer. These cancers are 7 times more likely for those who use tobacco but do not drink. For people who drink and smoke both, the possibility of developing these cancers increases by a factor of 38. And of course, liver cancer we've already discussed liver cancer. Alcohol leaches minerals from the body, leading to a greater risk of fracture. Myopathy, muscle inflammation can be caused by chronically imbalanced electrolytes due to alcohol consumption. Dilation of blood vessels near the skin can lead to a chronic reddish complexion, while the toxic effects of alcohol may lead to the thinning of the skin, acne rosacea, psoriasis, eczema, facial edema. You have to remember that alcohol dries your skin. And the reason it dries your skin is because it's evaporating from your skin. So if somebody's a really good alcoholic, a lot of times their skin feels really rough because they've had so much alcohol that's been leaving their body through their skin, so it makes their skin tough. Heavy drinking, it disrupts the immune system, but especially the white blood cells, making the individual susceptible to infections, especially respiratory infections, tuberculosis, and pneumonia. Chronic heavy usage of alcohol can make the individual a great deal of fun. They will have memory problems. They may suffer from hallucinations, paranoia, it's always a blast, severe depression, insomnia, intense anxiety, amnesia, and blackouts. Due to the damage to the frontal lobes and the hippocampus, the individual often has problems with concentration and implanting new information in the brain. On the average, heavy drinkers reduce their lifespan by as much as 15 years. There are 140 million drinkers in the United States. Of those, 10 to 12% become alcoholics. 14% of the male drinkers and 6% of the female drinkers will become alcoholics. Men become alcoholics at a younger age than women. 20% of all drinkers, heavy drinkers, consume 80% of all the alcohol. And this is one of the reasons why they don't target uh, sometime drinkers. They don't target the guy that drinks a beer a night. They target the people that are heavy drinkers because they will consume most of the alcohol. Alcohol production and usage has been controlled by financial factors since before the beginning of the United States. And just like slavery, its detractors have been screaming into the wind. Founding father Dr. Benjamin Rush warned of the deleterious effects of alcohol as early as 1804. Dr. Thomas Trotter was coming to the same conclusions at the same time, but their administrations fell on deaf ears. Remember all the alcohol that Americans were drinking at the time. In 1941, Dr. E.M. Jelinek and Carl Bowman developed a classification of the different forms of alcoholism. And now I have to tell you that my second wife was an alcoholic. I didn't know it when I married her. I guess I should have been warned. I was blinded by a lot of different things, but I ignored the fact that she was called the Jack Daniels Kid. I guess I should have taken that to heart. Anyway, things were going okay, and then she fell off the wagon, and I rarely saw her after that. Sad, sad, sad. The comfortable classification of alcoholics has changed over time as the understanding of the addiction process has progressed. According to a recent reclassification by the National Institute on Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism, constructed in 2007, there are 5 subtypes of alcoholics based on 6 criteria: family history, age of onset of drinking and problem drinking, patterns of craving and abuse, the use of additional drugs, and mental conditions. And there you go. Subtype 1, young adult, 31.5% of U.S. alcoholics are of this subtype. They are characterized by relatively low rates of simultaneous drug abuse and other mental conditions, low rates of family alcoholism, and they rarely seek any kind of alcoholic treatment. Subtype 2, young antisocial, 21% of U.S. alcoholics are young antisocial alcoholics. They are usually in their mid-20s with precocious onset of regular drinking and alcohol-related issues. Over 50% come from families with alcoholism problems, and about 50% have an antisocial personality disorder, and a major depression, bipolar disorder, and anxiety problems. Over 75% of will smoke cigarettes and marijuana, and a large percent also have cocaine or heroin addictions. More than 30% of them will look for help. Subtype 3, functional alcoholics. Functional alcoholics represent 19.5% of U.S. alcoholics, usually middle-aged, well-educated, with stable jobs and families. Approximately 33% present a multi-generational family history of alcoholism. About 25% presented major depressive illness during their lifetime, and about 50% were smokers. Functional alcoholics. Subtype 4, intermediate familial. 19% of U.S. alcoholics are intermediate familial alcoholics. Middle-aged and coming from multi-generational alcoholism. About 50% have presented clinical depression and 20% bipolar disorder. Most of them smoked cigarettes and about 20% abused cocaine and marijuana. Just 25% looked for a cure. Subtype 5, chronic severe alcoholics. 9% of U.S. alcoholics can be categorized as chronic severe. The majority are middle-aged individuals with early onset of drinking and alcohol-related issues, with high rates of antisocial personality disorder and criminality. 80% presented multi-generational alcoholism. They were the most prone to psychiatric conditions and drug abuse. 70% of them looked for help, forming the main category in alcoholic treatment. The coexistence of psychiatric and drug abuse issues were linked with severity of alcoholism in the data beginning the treatment. Help seeking was found to be relatively rare, people choosing mainly to attend Alcoholics Anonymous meetings and participate in other 12-step programs. Family studies have shown that there is a hereditary influence on alcoholism. The same genes that potentially lead to addiction also may express a proclivity to become an alcoholic, and that would be DRD2A1, the famous gene. But people who drink may have several other genetic anomalies that might lead to alcoholism. Many Asians have an aldehyde 2 gene that encodes aldehyde dehydrogenase. Because the person doesn't have as much of the enzyme to rid themselves of toxic alcohol, they become ill when they drink. Half of the Japanese and many other Asians have more efficient alcohol dehydrogenase and less efficient aldehyde dehydrogenase, which leads to a buildup of acetaldehyde, which in turn creates a toxic level of acetaldehyde, resulting in flushing of the skin, especially the face, tachycardia, headaches, edema, hypertension, and vomiting. Other indicators that heredity strongly influences alcoholism is such characteristics that run in families or groups, such as tendency to have blackouts, greater initial tolerance to alcohol, an impaired decision-making area of the brain, a major shift in personality during drinking, an impaired ability to learn from mistakes, retrograde amnesia, low level of response to alcohol, cirrhosis, and alcoholic psychosis. The environment that an individual inhabits can have a strong influence on whether they drink alcohol. Factors that can lead to alcohol abuse include child abuse, alcohol or other drug-abusing parents, friends, or family, chaotic familial relations, peer pressure, extreme stress. One of the most powerful environmental factors in alcohol or drug abuse is sexual, physical, or emotional abuse at a young age. In one study looking at 275 females and 556 male alcoholics, 20% of the men and 50% of the women said that they had been subjected to physical or sexual abuse as a child. When someone drinks alcohol, their brain-body chemistry changes. The brain body will try to protect itself from the effects of alcohol by developing a tolerance to the substance. The drinker will develop metabolic tolerance by metabolizing the alcohol more efficiently. The liver of the drinker will manufacture more enzymes to break down the alcohol and the metabolite acetaldehyde. This also accelerates the breaking down of other drugs, including prescription medications. When someone drinks alcohol, their brain-body neurochemistry changes. Pharmacodynamic tolerance takes place in the brain when brain neurons and other cells become resistant to the effects of alcohol by increasing the number of receptor sites for GABA in the brain, becoming less sensitive to alcohol. Behavioral tolerance occurs when the drinker learns to handle their liquor, changing their behavior to make it more acceptable and acting in a way to hide their drunkenness. Hangovers represent the individual's withdrawal reactions to the alcohol. 85 to 95% of these experiencing withdrawal will have only minor symptoms: rapid pulse, sweating, increased body temperature, hand tremors, anxiety, depression, insomnia, nausea, or vomiting. 5 to 15% will experience life-threatening major symptoms of withdrawal: tachycardia, which is a rapid heartbeat, transient tactile, auditory, or visual hallucinations and illusions, psychomotor agitation, grand mal seizures, delirium tremens. For individuals going through alcohol withdrawals, delirium tremens and seizures are the most severe and life-threatening effects. Before modern medications can ease the sufferer, 35% of people going through severe symptoms died. With modern techniques, the mortality rate still approaches 5 to 15%, and if left untreated, the rates increase to 10 to 20%. Delirium tremens usually begins 48 to 96 hours after the individual's last drink. The DTs can last from 3 to 10 days, with some serious cases extending into 50 days. Individuals who have gone through the DTs before seem to fear the powerful and frightening hallucinations that they suffer more than any other symptom. Severe symptoms develop after prolonged heavy drinking, 48 to 87 consecutive days of heavy drinking. We're not talking about pink elephants dancing around. We're talking about monsters. Drinking alcohol creates a neurotransmitter crisis in the brain. Because alcohol increases the effectiveness of GABA, which blocks the chemicals that induce energy, the person becomes drowsy and the bodily functions become depressed. The brain, however, compensates by increasing the energy chemicals and creating a state of hyperarousal. When withdrawal takes place after heavy alcohol usage, the hyperproduction of the energy and feel-good chemicals reverses itself, and they are produced at lower levels than normal. The decrease of energy chemicals causes tachycardia again, anxiety, increased muscular activity, hypertension, and seizures. The activity of serotonin is a good example. Serotonin is reduced 30% when heavy drinkers stop drinking, causing anxiety and depression during withdrawals. Over the last century, many sociological experiments have been conducted to reduce the effects of alcohol abuse: raising the drinking age, techniques to lower the child abuse in the home, limiting the sale of alcohol, working to lower the stress in everyday life. Most illicit drug users also drink. Most alcohol abusers use other drugs. A study in Europe in 2003 found that 600 adolescent drug of 600 adolescent drug users, 80% used both marijuana and alcohol. A similar study in the United States of adolescents in treatment found that 96% used alcohol with other drugs. A study in 2006 in the United States found that among heavy drinkers, 32.2% used illicit drugs at the same time. 80 to 95% of drinkers also smoke cigarettes, while 70% of alcoholics are heavy smokers as compared to 25% of the general population. Tobacco and alcohol are used to facilitate social situations. When alcohol and marijuana are used together, it accelerates relaxation. Drinking before using cocaine will prolong and intensify the effects of the cocaine, though it increases the predisposition for violence. Alcohol will facilitate an individual's ability to come down off of methamphetamine. Compulsive gamblers drink while gambling or gamble while drinking. Yeah. Unfortunately, many times people with mental disorders will use alcohol to relieve their symptoms. Self-medicating. Among men and women who are alcohol dependent, 4% suffer from bipolar disorder, 4 times the figure for the general population. 5.3% of general public suffer from major depression, while 28% of people diagnosed with alcohol dependence suffer from major depression. 16.4% of general public suffer from anxiety, while 37% of alcohol dependent people suffer from that malady. However, it is difficult to draw direct parallels between alcohol and mental illness because the effects of alcohol mirror or can create mental problems. Heavy drinking disrupts the neurotransmitters in the reward pathway that lead to feelings of well-being: opioid peptides, dopamine, serotonin, and GABA. In one detox center, 70% of the alcoholics were originally diagnosed as suffering from depression. After abstinence of a month or more, the depression diagnosis had dropped to 30%. Any psychiatric diagnosis must always take into account the possibility of drug-induced symptoms. Individuals diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder show symptoms of impulsivity, lack of remorse for causing harm, inability to learn from mistakes. These same symptoms are found in drug abusers, including alcoholics. 80% of those diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder develop substance dependence. If a mother drinks during pregnancy, especially the first trimester of her pregnancy, there is a great possibility that the alcohol will do damage to the fetus, and she is more likely to miscarry or cause infant deaths. Alcohol intake during pregnancy is the leading cause of intellectual disability in the United States. Surveys of pregnant women in the United States shows that 12.4% drank some alcohol during several months of their pregnancy. 4% used in binge patterns, 0.7% were heavy drinkers, 18% smoked cigarettes, and 4.3% used illicit drugs at least once. One study of 293 infants born with fetal alcohol syndrome, an alcohol-related neurodevelopmental disorder in Portland, Oregon, showed that 89% were using alcohol with at least 2 other drugs. 49% were using alcohol with cocaine. 100% were smokers. Most were single mothers as compared to married women. Most were high school dropouts. Most had a history of sexual and or physical abuse. Many had a history of drug or alcohol abuse in the family. Many had learning disabilities that may have come from substance abuse effects when they were in the womb. In a study of FAS at the University of Washington, 2 groups of infants were followed into adolescence. By the age of 5, 38% of the children's biological mothers, 38% had died of alcohol-related causes. 38%. By the time the group reached adolescence, 69% of the biological mothers had died of alcohol-related causes. Alcohol consumption during pregnancy can cause 3 varying degrees of problems: fetal alcohol syndrome, which encompasses retarded growth, facial deformities, problems with heart and limbs, central nervous system involvement, potentially lowered IQ from a range of 20 to 120 with a mean of 79. Alcohol-related neurodevelopmental disorders, alcohol-related birth defects. All 3 of these problems are referred to as fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, or FASD. And that's what it looks like. Ew, this is a normal brain. You can see the corpus callosum. This is a fetal alcohol brain. There is no heart. There it is right there. That's it. That's all the corpus callosum this kid's got. This is a normal child's brain, all the convolutions. And here is an FAS affected child's brain, smaller and with much fewer striations, convolutions. A child who suffers from less severe forms of FASD, ARND, or ARBD may have an IQ ranging from 49 to 142 with a mean score of 90, though they will have other problems. Difficulty with short-term memory, problems storing and retrieving information, difficulty forming links and making associations, problems making judgments and forming relationships, difficulty controlling temper and aggression, oversensitivity to bright light, loud noises, sharp smells, textures, and tastes of food. Worldwide fetal alcohol syndrome rates range from 0.33 to 2.9 cases per 1,000 births, though the figures vary by country and the use of alcohol. In the United States, the rates are 0.2 to 1.5 per 1,000 births. Asians and whites have 1 to 2 per 1,000. African Americans 6 per 1,000. American Indians 10 to 120 per 1,000, depending on the region and the tribe. The worst area is the Northern Plains. And the Southwest is actually the least severe. The incidence of ARND and ARBD are about 3 times that of FAS in all groups in the United States. The most destructive time to consume alcohol for the fetus is the 3rd week through the 8th week of gestation when the brain is forming. The corpus callosum is forming, the basal ganglia is forming, brain cell migration and organization are taking place. During the 2nd trimester, the facial features are forming and can be deformed by alcohol use. During the 3rd trimester, the hippocampus is forming, which might impair the encoding of visual and auditory information. The most destructive method of drinking for the fetus is to drink in a rapid manner. It is the concentration that is destructive, and drinking in that manner intensifies concentration. Studies have shown that 7 drinks per week is the minimum baseline for negative behavioral effects, but if the mother is consuming all of their alcohol in a binge pattern, the pattern becomes more important than the volume. During the growth period, alcohol contact for 4 hours is enough to kill brain cells. The only logical drinking pattern for a pregnant woman is total abstinence. When I was working in Omaha, I was working at St. Joseph Hospital, and Boys Town Institute was there, and they were working on fetal alcohol syndrome. This was back in the 80s. Yeah, this is back in the 80s when they first discovered fetal alcohol syndrome. So they were on the cutting edge of discovering what fetal alcohol syndrome was all about. Alcoholic fathers can also transmit mutated genes in their sperm due to the consumption of alcohol. While this can't lead to FAS, male children can suffer from other intellectual and functional deficits, impaired verbal skills, impaired thinking processes, impaired planning skills, problems with visual spatial skills, problems with motor skills, memory deficits, learning impairment. Alcohol interferes with the main inhibitory neurotransmitter in the brain, GABA, which reduces inhibitions. People with pre-existing aggressive tendencies will become more aggressive with the use of alcohol. 30% of the victims of violent crimes report that the perpetrator had been drinking alcohol before the offense. 15% of robberies, 26% of aggravated assaults, 50% of homicides. When arrested, alcohol levels of probationers was 0.18. Remember, 0.08 is drunk. When arrested, alcohol levels of local jail inmates was 0.20. When arrested, alcohol levels of state prisoners was 0.28. In a study from Memphis, Tennessee, of domestic violence calls, 92% of the perpetrators had consumed alcohol the day of the disturbance. 67% of the perpetrators had used cocaine the day of the disturbance. Half had used alcohol and or cocaine often during the last 30 days. Alcohol encourages the release of pent-up anger, hatred, and desires that are normally controlled by society. The drunk's moral judgment and reasoning are impaired by the alcohol. 34 to 74% of perpetrators of sexual assault have been drinking before the assault. 30 to 79% of the victims of sexual assault have been drinking prior to the assault. In 2005, 40% of the motor vehicle fatalities involved alcohol, 16,885. 90% of these situations involved a blood alcohol test of 0.08 or higher. 275,000 injuries occurred at the same time. However, an aggressive advertising campaign and more aggressive sentencing for DUI infractions has reduced traffic fatalities by 18%. How stupid can you be? 1 in 4 drunks drive within 2 hours of their last drink. On any given weekday night between 10 p.m. and 1 a.m., 1 out of every 13 drivers is legally drunk. On weekend mornings between 1 and 6 a.m., 1 in 7 drivers is drunk. If convicted, DUI perpetrators 61% drank beer only, 2% drank wine only, 18% drank liquor only, 20% mixed their drinks. Alcohol-related crashes cost an estimated $148 billion in the United States every year. A blood alcohol test of 0.08 is the legal limit for driving under the influence. The individual does not have to show impairment to be found guilty. It is estimated that only 1 driver is arrested for every 300 to 1,000 drunk driving trips. What has worked over the years to reduce traffic deaths due to alcohol, lowering the legal inebriation levels from 1.0 to 0.08, imposing immediate license revocation for individuals whose ethanol levels exceed the legal limit, increasing the legal drinking age from 18 to 21, maintaining zero tolerance for youth under 21 who are caught DUI. This has reduced crashes involving youth 17 to 50%. Requiring mandatory impounding or towing vehicles of DUIs, requiring mandatory treatment for DUI arrests. Dram laws, those who serve are liable for a customer who becomes intoxicated, that forces the bartender to watch who he's serving. 22 states have dram laws and 14 have limited dram laws. Both Iowa and Illinois have active dram laws that makes a proprietor actionable if a patron causes an injury. Medical reports involving alcohol. 15 to 25% of emergency room patients reported the use of alcohol, especially those involved in fights, assaults, and falls. Alcoholics are 16 times more likely to die in falls and 10 times more likely to be burned or die in a fire. 31% of boating fatalities had blood alcohol tests of 0.10 or more. 40% of industrial fatalities and 47% of injuries involve alcohol. Alcoholics commit suicide at twice the rate of the general population. What does this kid look like? He's white, he's male, he's middle-aged, he's unmarried, and he has a long history of drinking. Culture determines how an individual consumes alcohol. Wet cultures such as Austria, Belgium, France, Italy, and Switzerland sanction daily use of alcohol, integrate social drinking into everyday life. They serve watered-down wine to children with meals. They drink more beer and wine than dry cultures. Dry cultures, such as they have in Denmark, Finland, Norway, and Sweden, restrict alcohol use with heavy taxing. They consume more distilled spirits, about 50% more. They're characterized by binge drinking, particularly males on the weekend. Mixed cultures, such as that in Canada, England, Germany, Ireland, and the United States, demonstrate patterns of binge drinking, have a higher incidence of violence to women than either of the wet or dry cultures. Russia has had an alcohol-soaked culture for over 500 years. Vodka is traditionally drunk between meals in large quantities. A form of prohibition that started in 1985 resulted in illegal manufacture and 11,000 alcoholic poisoning deaths. The male life expectancy actually rose in Russia during the Prohibition period. As soon as Prohibition ended, alcohol poisonings increased to 40,000 per year. Male life expectancy dropped by 6 years in 1 year. In England, 70% of the population drinks regularly. 2/3 of the consumption of alcohol is in the form of beer. Recent attempts to curb the destruction of alcohol in the British public have been in the form of prohibiting happy hours, allowing the pubs to stay open past 11 p.m. to reduce the need for binge drinking, encouraging the English to reduce average consumption to 3 drinks a day. On the average, men drink more per drinking episode than women do. Men are also tend to have more adverse social and legal effects from the alcohol. Women tend to increase their drinking after they pass 30 years of age. Even when they are dependent on alcohol, women drink 1/3 less than men who are dependent. Hereditary factors seem to be stronger in women when it comes to alcohol. Female alcoholics have 50 to 100% higher death rates than male alcoholics, usually from cirrhosis of the liver, circulatory disorder, suicide, or accidents. The younger an individual starts using alcohol or tobacco, the more likely they will have a problem with the substances later in life. 6.2% of 8th graders have been drunk in the past month. 18.8% of 10th graders have been drunk in the past month. 30% of 12th graders have been drunk in the past month. The immaturity of the adolescent brain can lead to unwise decisions. When disinhibiting factor of alcohol is thrown into the mix, the individual is more likely to drive drunk, unplanned pregnancy, sexual aggression. Drinking during adolescence leads to limited emotional growth. College students or adolescents into their junior year, 44% of our best and brightest admit to binge drinking. About half the binge drinking college students admit that their grades fall into the C to F range. Many also admit to missing class on a regular basis. A national study showed a direct correlation between the number of drinks consumed per week and the individual's grade point average. Women are more sensitive to the deleterious effects of alcohol on grades. 86% will show the same pattern of drinking that they developed in high school. By graduation, the college-educated drink less than the non-college attending peers. Males binge more than females, 48.6% compared to 40.9%. 50.2% of white students binge as compared to 34.4% of Hispanic students, 26.2% of Asians, and 21.7% of blacks. Fraternity residents binge at 75.4%. Dormitory residents binge at 45.3%. Off-campus residents binge at 54.5%. Married residents binge at 26.5%. College drinking leads to 1,700 deaths per year, 690,000 physical assaults, 599,000 injuries, and 97,000 sexual assaults. Intelligence about drinking doesn't increase with age. 2,500,000 Americans have alcohol-related problems. As patterns develop sometimes as a pre-adolescent can continue into old age. Alcohol can deplete bone density, especially in women who tend to be more susceptible to osteoporosis. Who are we talking about? The paler your skin, the more likely that you're having problems. Surprisingly, about 1/3 of all older people who drink didn't start until they were older. Asians and Pacific Islanders have the lowest alcohol consumption rate of any of the major racial or ethnic groups in the United States. 4% of the adult population are heavy consumers. Filipino and Japanese Americans are the most likely from this group to drink heavily. Koreans have the highest number of abstainers. African Americans have the second lowest percentage of heavy drinkers in their population at 4.2%, compared to whites at 7.4%. Only 40.8% of black males drink monthly compared to 56.5% of white males. Peak drinking seems to occur after the age of 30. Explanations for high levels of abstention among blacks may be their long history of strong spirituality and matriarchal family structures. 8.1% of the Hispanic population consume alcohol at a heavy rate. Heavy alcohol use is highest among Mexican Americans. Past month use runs at about 46.7%. Binge drinking runs at about 25.8%. 6.2% of Hispanics can be classified as alcohol dependent. American Indian and Alaska Natives have drinking rates that greatly vary from region of the country and tribal affiliations. The heaviest drinking appears to occur among the Northern Plains tribes. Of the 10 leading causes of death, 5 are directly connected to alcohol abuse. Number 3 is unintentional injuries. Number 4 is diabetes. Number 6 is liver disease and cirrhosis. Number 8 is suicide. And number 10 is homicide. Alcohol-related motor vehicle deaths are 5.5 times higher than the general population among the American Indian and Alaska Natives. Cirrhosis of the liver is 4.5%, 5 times higher. Alcoholism is 3.8 times higher. Homicide is 2.8 times higher. And suicide is 2.3 times higher. And that is the end of the chapter, which is a good thing because I was about to fall asleep. Okay, I'll talk to you maybe next week.